welcome, Dennis. Welcome to Big Conversations by Ordinary People podcast.
Thank you.
We are honored you've seen our process. We are still a bit rudimentary, but that is currently it's still by design because what we are trying to do is try to make broadcasting as cheap as possible. And I think this is just the side effect of that. And so Mark, who is the producer for the show, wanted to talk about intellectual property. So some of the conversations we usually have around, when you have conversations with artists, it's around, how to monetize their work. And a big part of that is obviously, owning their work. That's what intellectual property is mostly about. How do I know that even if you're playing my song on your phone, it's still mine, I get something for it. And I wanted you to first sort of give an introduction. Since we've not talked before, I would have given the introduction for you, but give an introduction to who you are and what you do and stuff like that.
All right. So I'm Dennis Scheirs. I'm from Belgium, and I work for the European Union for the Intellectual Property Department. That's a separate agency that is based in Spain. So I've lived the last 15 years of my life in Spain. I worked in that agency.
Do you know Messi?
Yeah?
Do you know Messi?
I know Messi.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. They'll live there. Yeah. And then recently, so I worked a lot with the European countries to harmonize the system there. But then recently, a new project in Africa was started in February 2020, and then I started to work on this project, and since April I moved into Zimbabwe because the project will cover all of Africa, but one of the main stakeholders is in Zimbabwe, so that's why I'm based here. So that's
I see. And what's the nature of this project?
This project is basically a cooperation project between Europe and Africa. The idea is the aim is to improve the trade between the two continents, but also to facilitate it within the African continent. So it's a legal project mostly, which means that by making the legal systems compatible between the different countries, continents, it basically facilitates the trade. When the systems are similar, it all works better. So we really want to give a push there. Now the main pillars of the project, the first one is to give support with African Continental Free Trade Area negotiations. So we give we do some capacity building with the negotiators there, because they're right now negotiating the intellectual property chapter of the agreement. Then we do capacity building. This is with the regional offices in Africa. There's two, one for the French-speaking and one for the English-speaking countries, and also for the national offices. And then a third one, this is an important, this is also one of the reasons why I came here, is to increase the awareness on intellectual property with small and medium enterprises and just the general public. And the fourth component is also an interesting one, is to basically give support with the setup of GIs, Geographical Indications. Just an example, this would be in Europe we have champagne, and champagne is the qualities of champagne are due to the region where the grapes are created,
wine from that
and they have it's kind of a trademark for those products. Now in Africa there's a lot of potential for GIs, but their legal frameworks are not ready in all of the countries, and also still the producers need to get support basically to get together and to organize themselves, and then to create such GIs. So it's quite, the project has a lot of different components. We work on the highest level with the policymakers, the lawmakers, and then we also work with the producers of these GIs. So it's quite.
I see. Yeah, let's first dive a little bit into intellectual property. My reservation with intellectual property is it sort of creates, I don't know the right word, but I'm going to give an analogy here. a few people in Uganda can drive a Mercedes, right? And then other people can drive, say, a RAV4, and then other people can't drive at all, right?
Wait, can you repeat?
So, 3 classes of people in Uganda, right?
Yeah.
There's a class that can drive a Benz, a Mercedes Benz,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Then there's a class that can drive a RAV4,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And then there's a class that can't drive at all.
Oh, of course.
Right?
The different
Yeah,
social classes.
yes. But one thing that's similar about these people is they're both going to be able to get free music. When Shiba releases a song, all of them are going to enjoy it the same way, right? Yeah. Yes. When we start to implement, when we enforce, I think there are rules around intellectual property already in Uganda. For example, copyright, I think, is already a rule here. But when we start to enforce, right?
Yes.
What that's going to happen is, okay, let me give a better example. The better example is movies, right? Yeah. Most of the movies that I watch in Uganda are pirated movies, right? Most of the Hollywood movies. There's a national TV, I think, called U24, that literally broadcasts stolen movies.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
I hope I'm not, I'm sure you'll know if you didn't know before, right? So that's, the beauty about that is, it doesn't matter where you are on the social, what your social station is. Yeah. If you're interested in quality art, you have access to it because it is sort of quasi-free, right? Yeah, and this also happens in a way because of the structure of the globe that the guys who make the movies still make enough money off their movies, right? A person in Uganda, a poor person in Uganda stealing your movie or your music doesn't take away from you because this is again the nature of digital content, right? The rate of duplicating, the cost of duplicating is almost zero, right? So my issue with intellectual property is it's going to create the information gap that sort of things like the internet have tried to close, right? Yeah, and I'm wondering, how are you thinking about that?
Well, you see it very much from the perspective from anybody on the street, but if you look from the perspective from the artist, just any artist here in Uganda that works hard, create their songs, and this needs to be somehow they need to also get the fruits from their work. Now, if everybody just goes out there and copies their CDs and there's nobody that pays, then can this artist survive? So in the end, if everybody pays a little bit for this artist, then the artist can continue. Now, I understand when you look at the big companies, in the end, for them it doesn't matter so much, but this has an impact also on the local artists, all the creative sectors. So this is here to protect them, because otherwise, what can they do? If everybody just goes there and copies their music, then what can they do?
Yeah, again, so this is not the first time someone has proposed something like this. And for me, when I hear people proposing that the solution to the money problem, the incentive for artists to make money off their art is to force everyone else to pay for it. When people propose that, for me, it doesn't seem like the right approach. Yeah, for example, in Ugandan music sector right now, prior to COVID, artists still were some of the most, apart from people who earn money from academia, things like you go to school, get a degree and get a job. The second to that were artists, right? So musicians, they make their music, it's still distributed for free. They pay, some of them pay to get their music distributed, and in return, they make money from concerts and things like that. There are other avenues for making money from people who are willing to give that money, and that money is, to me, in my opinion, is still enough because the greatest artist in Uganda, Bobby Wine, is one also of the richest ones of them all, right? And this is money he has made from music. He has never sold, maybe he has sold an album, but only willing people. Most of his music circulates for free, right? So I wonder whether this is an actual solution to the problem, or we are just again importing some sort of European ideas to...
I don't think you're being very fair, because you started off saying that, these big companies, in the end, if they earn a bit less money, it doesn't matter. And now, now you're defending Bob Wayne, one of the biggest artists here, but what about the artists that aren't as famous as Bobby Wine? And they cannot just survive with here and there doing concerts. They need the revenues also from their songs being played. Otherwise, they don't reach the end of the month. So this is to protect them. I'm sure that Bob Wayne won't eat a sandwich less, or he won't feel. But this is to protect those beginning artists. But we are very much focusing on the creative sector. But there's also another example I can give. You've worked very hard to establish this as a brand, as a trademark. Now, what if somebody else starts a podcast and they use this and they just use a red color, and then all the hard work that you put into making this a brand and establishing this can just be stolen by this other person? Won't you then come and tell me do something about it, because this guy is stealing my effort, my energy that I put into it? I see. It really depends from which angle you look at it, and of course it needs to be a balance, and to be honest, I think there's also, before it exists, but now there's platforms where you can watch movies, you can listen to music for a price that is affordable. So before, I think there was more of an excuse saying, okay, I cannot even access it legal because the price is just too high. I think now you can, and then actually you can contribute to the creative sector, or just make sure that everybody gets their share. And this is really, and this is one of the things that I want to do with the project, to explain this, that intellectual property is for those, not the superstars, but the people.
I see. Yeah. So I think that's a fair point, and I agree. And I'll give an example. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate, so you can sort of address this from the other perspectives. The other big problem is the infrastructure problem, right? Again, if our podcast, for example, we distribute it on Spotify and Amazon, among other places, right? But Spotify and Amazon are not available in Uganda, right? Yes. So we have to have to put on a VPN and pretend to be in the US to listen to my own podcast, my own content, right? Yes. And that again becomes the other question, right? Do we have the kind of infrastructure that enable us to enforce this? It's easier to come and say, oh, you know what, let's close. So there's a Gazaland in town. There's a building in town that's known for duplicating content, right? It's easy to say, let's bring the military and close this building. And so, we are protecting the artist, right? But what we are also doing in return is starving the consumer from this content, right? Because we don't have the infrastructure, the kind of infrastructure that is ready for intellectual property rights to that extent, right? And the one thing about this is, like many problems, sort of a capitalistic approach, right? Letting the businesses figure out how to solve this, in a way, is more reasonable to me. It's more organic. It's more natural to me than having policymakers come in and try to enforce a few things, right? If instead of Bobby Wine trying to close Gazaland, he could start a streaming service and only distribute his music from that streaming service, right? So then it forces me to get the service if it's a fair price, right? But what I see most of, and I've spoken to a number of artists, what I see most of them trying to do is let the government help us, enforce. Let the government basically stop people from listening to our music unless they're willing to pay, or let the government pay us, whatever works best. And I'm wondering, your approach, when you look at the infrastructure in Uganda, for example, right? Or in Zimbabwe where you've been, and I'm not sure Zimbabwe, Uganda, which one's worse, right? But I think they're still on the same level, If you look at the infrastructure, access to services like Spotify, Apple Music, and also the cost, right? So Apple Music here is about, I think, 30,000 shillings a month, right? It's about 30,000 shillings a month, or maybe 35,000 shillings a month. But that's not money you take for granted, for the normal consumer of Bwine's music, right? Do you think we have the infrastructure that puts us in a great position to actually have these property rights enforced the way they're enforced in Europe or in the US, for example?
Well, I don't know exactly where they stand here in Africa with these things, but in Europe, I don't know, Spotify, Netflix, these platforms, they're really new. You know, they just are here a number of years, and I think in very little time they managed to fill up the gap and to really reach out to the people. Okay, maybe here we're not at that stage, but I think it's when you have it for one country, it's easy to make it also available in another country. So I'm quite sure that in Uganda this is just a matter of time. And yeah, I think this shouldn't be an excuse, you know, to just
Still
not contribute to somebody that creates content. I don't know, but because I don't want to just speak about the music industry, you know, and I just because maybe for a lot of people that have a small business, you know, the infrastructure is there to protect their intellectual property. You know, especially in Uganda, actually, your Uganda Registration Service Bureau is really advanced and innovative. You know, I can compare it to other countries and even beyond Africa. You know, you can file for your trademark online, so you have it instantly. It's you don't need to go through lawyers, so the whole procedure has been facilitated a lot. So I think all those barriers that you mentioned, I completely agree. They make it harder either to get protection for your intellectual property or to consume intellectual property. But this is a matter of time, and then this barrier will be gone.
I see. And yeah, so I'm wondering now, you know, if you're at liberty to tell us a little bit more of the approach, you know, the kind of projects that you're working on. I know you mentioned it's from a legal perspective, you know. I wonder if you can dive a little bit deeper and sort of enlighten us on, you know, how you see this working.
Okay. Well, we have the four components that I explained before. Maybe I start with the GIs, you know, the Geographical Indications. So what we're doing with the project, but we do this together with our African partners.
Yeah.
So there's a French-speaking regional organization which is based in Cameroon, and the English, this is EUIPO, and the one in Zimbabwe is AfrIPI, which also covers Uganda. Basically, what we are doing now is to identify in Africa which regional products could be a local product that can be a proper trademark almost, no? For example, here there's I've been here now for 2 weeks and I've seen that there's this fish tilapia. Yeah, tilapia. Yes. So this is you know, you can only find this fish probably in the lake. So this fish is rooted to Uganda. So you would want to protect tilapia and make sure that there's not another African country that suddenly also has another fish and call it the same just because yours is famous.
I see.
So what we are doing is to identify such possible products. No? In Cameroon we have Pena pepper, that we've supported this one. In Mozambique there is cabrito de tete, which is a goat meat, which is very peculiar. So we are identifying these products and then we go to these countries and either we try to establish a legal framework so this can be protected, or when the legal framework is there, we help these GIs to be registered. Now, what is the consequence? Basically, when you have such a product that, or the goat meat or the fish, when it is protected and it has a kind of a brand, eventually the price will be higher, you know, and the price will be higher, and also there will be quality mechanisms put in place, so the quality of the product becomes better. So in the end, the local community gets their part of it, you know, and I think we did some studies there, and we see that sometimes even the price can be doubled of these products, and this eventually comes to the local producer. So here it would be the fishermen who in the end have a better income. So that's one component on GIs. The other one is on awareness for intellectual property in Africa. This is just to show or to make everybody aware that intellectual property is there for you. So when you have especially a small business and you want to make sure that when you have a brand and everybody recognizes you, that then like you could be, say, the star bar. This could be a bar you create. It gets famous, it gets renowned, and then of course 2 weeks after, maybe there's another bar in the street that just says also star bar. So when you make the investment, that you can easily protect it, and actually it's for an affordable price and in an easy way. So as I mentioned, you can actually here do it all online and get your registry. So that's an important aspect. We would like to collaborate maybe there with influencers to reach out really, because one thing is if the boring people come and tell you a message, another thing is when really the artists themselves, as actually happened this week. We had artists that came to we had a conference here on copyrights, and they came and they supported the conference, saying that yes, I want my work to be protected because I want to get the fruits of my work. So that's another important component. And then we have capacity building, which is usually we try to help to modernize the different intellectual property offices in the different countries. We do this by means of IT. So we have innovated quite a lot, or put a lot of efforts and innovation over the last few years, and now we can actually also do this together with the African offices. This allows to be more transparent. So, for example, by putting your registry online, then you can see which trademarks are already out there. So, if you then want to set up a new business, you can make sure that you won't have a conflict with another company. So this brings transparency, and this makes it easy for everyone, but also it's more efficient, more easy to file for trademarks or to do any legal proceedings. And then also on the side of the intellectual property offices, they can work more efficient. Yeah. And this means that maybe all the work that is monotonous, and this could be in a way be automated so that they can focus on the real issues. So that's for the component on capacity building. And then the first component that I actually speak about last, this was with the African Continental Free Trade Area negotiations. So this is of course the future, or potentially the future of Africa, not to have one common market. But when you have one common market, you need to have common laws. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And right now, the laws are very different between one country and the other, and also in some of the laws, the international agreements are not incorporated. So international agreements, they basically are around the globe, and if you apply these also in your local law, it means that you will be compatible with the other countries, which makes it easier for your companies to go out there and then export to other continents, but also the other way around. So the globalization there is somehow.
I think that's actually what I really wanted to ask you about. So there is the nature, the current nature of collaboration, for example, between Africa. We have, for example, we've been big exporters of sugar to Kenya, but it's not very clear why. Kenya rejected a lot of our sugar, and I think one argument is we met our quota. The argument is we don't meet the quality they want. It's not. It seems like it's a political thing. It's not yet clear why that is. But also, if you look at the Americas, for example, right? I think it's the NAFTA. I remember during the Trump time, there was a very big controversy around one of those international agreements that, most of the farmers in America thought it sort of put them in a bad place and helped globalists instead succeed, globalism, because people who have positioned themselves to do multinational trade, right? And I'm wondering, where is that trade-off? Because what I imagine in Uganda right now is what would happen is the country, what you call Uganda also it's sort of very abstract, but right now I'm part of Uganda, but if Uganda went into a trade agreement with the rest of Africa, my assumption is, Museveni and his family members are going to create sort of factories that are able to sell to Nigeria, right? And if I try to compete with them, my license will be revoked, right? So there will still be a few small companies that, because again there is this legalistic artificial infrastructure that's been set up to allow this trade. These companies, only a few small companies in the name of Uganda, they'll call themselves Uganda, will be able to profit from this legal framework. While if you left it to be the natural way, then it's up to me right now, because it's still possible for me to sell something to Nigeria, right? But it's up to me to figure out what Nigerians would want. It's sort of an entrepreneurial spirit, it's sort of a fair competitive spirit. I figure out what Nigerians would want, and if I can build it better in Uganda and figure out how to get it to Nigeria. And I don't know if my point is coming out clearly.
Okay, yes. I think it's a very interesting topic. Okay, where do I start? So for example, you have a really nice, innovative product that tackles the Nigerian market, and you want to export there. But if you don't have a unified market, then Nigeria can just say, okay, for your product, we are going to have tariffs. You need to pay 100% on the price of whatever you import, so they can protect their local businesses and make them compatible, or at least they can compete then with you. And otherwise, maybe they wouldn't be able to compete with you because you would have a better product or a cheaper product or whatever. So if you don't have a unified market, you depend really on what the different governments do and decide, which of their industries they want to promote and which other industries of other countries they want to block, which is exactly what happens in the US with the farmers. They incentivize the farmers, so actually they are stronger than they would be if there would be no subsidies from the US. Now, when you have a unified market, then there cannot be a Nigerian government that comes to you and say, okay, your products, I'm going to block you, and you will have to pay some taxes before you can import it here. They won't be able to do that. So if you have a good product, you will succeed a lot easier. You will have an easier reach out. It will be easier for you to grow, and your economy and your people around you will grow with you. Of course, if you don't have an innovative product, or you're not so well organized, suddenly you will have more competition, because then maybe suddenly there is Tanzania that also produces that product, and then suddenly they come to this market. So it's not necessarily better for all the local companies, but for the good companies, they will be able to thrive.
I see what you mean.
And this is one, I recently read a book about this, and it said that if you allow the governments to decide to which industry should prevail over another one, and you eliminate in a certain way, or at least you flatten the competition, you make your industry, your companies lazy, because they're protected. So they don't need to take that next step just to be on the edge and win the competition. So your industry just goes down, the level goes down. Whereas where you have competition, it will grow, no? And this, you can even see this in the sports. No, I just saw today of one from the Olympic Games. I don't remember the name, but the guy that had the world record, and he was asked, "Why is your world record still standing after 30 years?" And he said that in his age, in his time, he had so much competition from the athletes around him, that they forced him to just jump further and further. And just nowadays there's less competition, and so they don't need to go to the edge. Okay, it's maybe a strange analogy, but in a way, I think that's what happens with a free market. So and that's why I think what you said, that you would be free to export to Nigeria. I don't think so, because there's Nigeria that can block you.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
So that's what we've done in Europe, you know. Now a number of years ago, and then we grew, and it seems to work quite fine. But no, there is also the criticism, because what we have in Europe is then the transport industry is now quite strong in Eastern Europe, and our Western Europe transport industry is suffering because of this. So then they complain, ooh, before it was better.
Yeah.
So it's not black and white, you know. It's
I see. Yeah. So also I want to understand how hard this is, because now from my perspective, I see if. Okay, so first have to explain this to me. So if I register my brand, right, Big Conversations by Ordinary People, with URSB, and I say, you know, this is my trademark, right? If a Nigerian in Nigeria, you know, registered the same in Nigeria, would both of our brands be legal in our capacities?
Okay, it's a good question. Now, there's certain elements to a trademark. You know, there is first of all, or the main elements is like the logo. So is and then also what it protects. So you have to see with the other company, is it the same business? Because if he's producing apples and you're in an IT company, actually there is not such a big problem having the same logo, because you go to other audiences. Yeah. So there is not such a big problem. So that's one thing that needs to be analyzed. And subsequently, when you register your trademark in Uganda, your protection is in the country of Uganda. So it's perfectly possible that there is one guy in Nigeria that has the same trademark. But then the question arises, what happens if the Nigerian then registers his one in Uganda? So there, one of the elements that is also looked at, well, in principle, if you register here, you have the protection here. But and there I can speak for Europe. So if you would register now and then the one in Nigeria a bit later, he comes to Uganda, he would have 6 months to also protect here. And if he was first, you would be eliminated. So, but this is already a rather complex matters. And it depends also on the national legislation. The rules, Ideally, when you want to register a trademark and you have the idea that one day, or it doesn't have to be now, but one day you might export or you might do trade with another country, you can better register it, because it's not so expensive. Or secondly, at least there are tools available that so you can see which trademarks are registered in the other countries. So if you look before you register here, you see there is this identical trademark in Nigeria, you know that you might have troubles. So this is one of the importance of this, shows the importance of what I said before, to build the tools to make everything transparent. So what we try to do with our projects, for example, is to link all of the African countries with one database, so everybody can see what is registered where. Yeah. So you don't bump into problems on the roads. You can already beforehand see and decide whether you want to take the risk to bump into the problem. I see.
Yeah, so the question that follows up is the nature of, say, copyright, right? If I made a song that sounds similar to a song that is not within my jurisdiction, right? That's not within, say, Uganda. Yeah. Am I still considered infringing on the copyright of the other person, for example?
That depends. It depends. This is actually the answer that
So
the lawyers will give you. It depends. It depends how similar it is. It depends if it is done on purpose. If it depends on so many different factors.
So here's what I'm thinking, right? Assuming all those can be, it's done, assuming I copied it, right? But the only difference between these two pieces of art is that mine is Ugandan, right? And his is Nigerian, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's considered copyright still.
Yes. There you depend very much also on the international treaties. We've just established
I see.
2 weeks ago an international treaty here. It was in Kampala, where you can protect your copyright, and by voluntarily registering it, you have automatically protection in the 20 member states of AfrIPI. So you cover a bigger territory. Okay, but of course there's 55 countries in Africa, so you don't automatically make the link with all of Africa. But ideally, I hope one day these systems become more and more integrated, so you can actually have that protection immediately. That's also why these international treaties, why I think they have added value, because we are more and more in a globalized world, so you don't really want to protect your songs just in Uganda if they're also listened to in Nigeria or beyond. So that's the advantage of these international treaties, that your protection goes.
Yeah, so how does this also compare to the business approach? Yeah, so I know, for example, with music, the musicians I know, on YouTube, they have to, I think they give their rights, they I don't know, a company buys their rights, right? So it can enforce them on YouTube, right? So if say, if a musician, say Jose Chameleone, made a Ugandan song, and someone wanted to play Jose Chameleone's song in their YouTube video, and that someone is from the US, the copyright is going to be claimed by an American company, because YouTube again is not in Uganda, right? An American or Ireland company, right? And that is like what sort of, that is when those companies come, that is their pitch, right? That YouTube does not recognize your copyright, but maybe it does, but YouTube has no way of enforcing your copyright. But if you sell us these rights to monitor for your copyright on YouTube, we'll tell YouTube that every time such a song is played, we will send the copyright claim, right? Yes. So I'm wondering, why is that not a solution? Why do we need international treaties instead of like having businesses set themselves up multinationally to sort this out?
Because if there wouldn't be a law that protects you, this company couldn't do anything, because based on what would then you could sue YouTube because they are blocking your song and there is no reason for them to do it. But because there is copyright law, you can enforce your IP rights. This cannot be done by companies.
So I get that. No, I'm saying the international law. So I know US has its copyright law, Uganda has its copyright law, right? So what this company does is it buys the content from you, or the copyright. I don't understand the exact nature of that stuff, but the American company will buy it, right? So if an American infringes on my copyright, I can't sue them because I'm Ugandan, but the American company can sue them because the American company has the copyright.
They basically have the property of the copyright.
Yes. So I'm wondering, why is it that? Why again do we need international laws per se to enforce copyright among? So I don't know if copyright is the right example, but to enforce property rights among.
Well, this company basically enforces copyrights. Now, to be able to enforce a copyright, you need to have a law. You cannot just go there and enforce something out of hot air. So I think both are actually compatible. You need a legal framework so that this company can do this. If there were no legal framework, they wouldn't be able to protect anybody's copyright. So that's the importance. And I don't think one excludes the other. They are complementary.
So maybe I'm using law as a different treaties. I think I mean treaties. So again, so what I'm trying to drive to is the nature of multinational treaties, right? And the bias I have against them is, you know, the thing country is so abstract, right? When, say, the government chooses to borrow money from China in Uganda, in the name of as Uganda, right? They didn't consult me, you know, that has nothing to do with me, right? But there's a treaty.
Sorry, you chose, no, in principle, you chose your government that did this, no, but okay.
Yeah, and I see what you mean, yes, I see what you mean. Yeah. In an ideal world, in an ideal world, it would be a government that represents me,
Exactly.
But in the real world, that's not realistic, right? But the alternative to multinational treaties, where, you know, governments that are supposed to represent people don't actually represent them, do this. The alternative is business, right? So what I do, instead of having a treaty between Uganda and Nigeria, where, you know, Nigerians shouldn't encroach on sort of Ugandan patents, what I would do instead is establish a company in both Uganda and a legal entity in Nigeria, which owns my content, so it can enforce for using Nigerian local laws, you know, without any need of like international treaties in between.
Yes, but which authority can a company enforce? Based on what?
So the local laws. Okay, I think I'm just not understanding.
Okay. No, that's fine. No. You're right. Okay, it can be done on the local laws. Yeah. Now, then you have to imagine how many countries there are over the world. And when you want to enforce a certain IP right in one country, the IP right might be not even the same as in another country. So they might be slightly different. Or in one country, they might be defended stronger than in another country. So you have all these imbalances. So if you as an individual, maybe just as a company, you want to find out how you can protect and what you have, you know how costly that is to get an army of lawyers just to understand what your rights are and how you need to enforce it, what the mechanism is in each of the countries. It's so consuming, and that's why if you somehow have a harmonization by having, in the end, shared laws, which is the international treaties, you make it easier to interpret, you make it easier to work cross-boundary. For small companies, big companies, it is valid for everyone. So that's the big advantage, to basically create a transparent system, so you don't get bad surprises here and there.
I see what you mean. So also the one thing, we are going to move away from this interview, but the one thing, if you look at China, right? China has been a success story for literally copying Silicon Valley. There is a show called Silicon Valley on HBO that makes a joke about copying Silicon Valley companies in China, right? And if you look at this from the Silicon Valley perspective, it's not fair, right? If you look at this from the Chinese perspective, this is a success story. They're raising 800 million people out of poverty, right? By copying solutions that are already invented somewhere else. Yeah. Does that not make a case that maybe copyright or enforcing intellectual property generally is a way of restricting self-expression? Refusing me to copy you is sort of stopping my right to free expression.
That's fair what you say, but okay, maybe it's maybe not so interesting for China to enforce the IP rights. That's what you're saying. But then what happens in 5 years, or when then China have their own products that then will be copied by US, then it will be a different story. So I don't know what is then.
I think fair? China relies on the assumption that it will always be able to compete by other means, right? It will be able to produce things cheaply. It will be, it doesn't need to own the intellectual property.
That's for now, but that's in the end, then you will always be a follower in a way. But I don't think that is the ambition of China in the long run. So I think maybe you're right at this moment in time, but I think also Chinese companies more and more will be copied, and they will have the problem themselves.
I see.
And then the story will change. And actually, I think we already see this a bit. I think China is now more aware about counterfeiting, and they try to put measures. Actually, was it last week I read? Last week I read that the Alibaba web store would now be more controlled on counterfeit products.
Okay.
So at least there is some progress there, and I think the reason of the progress is basically because they are creating their own content, also their own products.
I see. Yeah. So how long have you been in Uganda so far? Let's talk about Uganda now.
The 2 weeks. I've been here 2 weeks. Yes.
2 weeks. Oh, that's a short
weeks.
time. You've not had the chance to look at places.
Oh, I did. So I was here for the conference, and then the first weekend I went to Jinja, to the source of the Nile, which was amazing, really, really nice. I went with another colleague. We did the kayak on the Nile. So
did you do the whitewater rafting?
No, I didn't do that because we didn't have the time for that. No, because it's in the end we just had 1 day. And then when the conference finished, I added a few days to my stay here to go to Bwindi. So I actually just came back now from Bwindi yesterday to see the gorillas, which was amazing. You know, one of the reasons why I wanted to do the project in Africa was to get to know Africa, and the first thing that came to my mind was to go and see the gorillas. So I was so happy when I then had the chance to come here and actually add a few days. Yeah.
I see. What of the other places in Africa you've been? How do they compare to?
Okay. I've been to Senegal, to Kenya, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and now Uganda. So. The one I like the most, I'm not saying it because I'm here, but I think the one I like the most is Uganda, because it has such a variety. You know, you have the lake, so you already have water, which is nice. Then you have the mount. Actually, I just passed by the mountains, the Rwenzori. And then I learned that there were 5,000 meters. I was like, oh, next time I come here, I want to do trekking. The gorillas, then we passed through the Queen Elizabeth Park. So we saw some elephants. Like, wow, you have really everything. And then I even, there is party in Kampala. I can tell, because if it's already there's party in COVID times, then... So I want to come back for the Nyeke festival, because I heard this is a crazy event.
It's supposed to be happening just right around now.
Yeah, so maybe I come back next year. And then the other countries, they're also nice, but I didn't see such a rich variety. So if I would have to recommend one of my friends that wants to see Africa in a short amount of days and without moving around too much, I think Uganda is the place.
Yeah, this is though not the best time, as you've said. There's all that stuff in Uganda, but still the best part of Uganda is meeting the people, going out to parties and festivals and interacting with drunk Ugandans. That's the best part of the country. Yeah. Also, now I want to understand a little bit of, Dennis the person, what inspires you to try and save the world's intellectual property, who is the person and what is that backstory?
For me, I just rolled into it. Because I'm from Belgium, but then I met a girl who was Spanish, so basically I moved to Spain, and then I was there, and then I was like, okay, maybe I should find a nice job, or I wasn't too happy with what I was doing, and then I ended up in the intellectual property office, the European one, which was based in Alicante, which is just a small town. So it's just pure coincidence that I ended up there. But then I've been working there now for 14 years, which is a long time. And I don't know, the thing is the organization was so big that I could always do something different. So, and I gradually could grow into the cooperation side of it, which I enjoyed a lot. I've done many cooperation projects and I don't even care so much that it's intellectual property. I just enjoyed in a way unifying Europe, because we had worked with all the European governments, and they all are a bit different, and sometimes it's just no reason for it. And because of the advantage of having everything harmonized, I worked a lot on this, and that was very rewarding, because in the end, I like to put my time in something that leaves something behind as well. So I really enjoyed that, and then I got offered to come to Africa, and for me it was a logical step to do, because all the things that I had done before, like I had learned so much, and I can use it here. I can add value in the end, make an impact, and on top of that, to get to know Africa, because I think Africa is the hardest continent to travel, because there's not so, compared to Asia, where like there's so much tourism and everything is so smooth. Here it's I would say more raw, no? But it just also makes it more interesting, but harder. You have to work for it.
True.
Like if I want to go see the gorillas, I need to dig around, see how this is done, and then find out it's with Uganda wildlife authorization. I need to go there, and then I need, so it's I don't know, like, which also makes it more rewarding, because then now I visited gorillas, but I worked for it. Like I worked because I wanted to go and see it. So in the end, it's that's true. I've been to Asia myself, and in Asia, almost everything is a Google search away. If you want to do something, you go to Google, and it will show you, a checklist of all the steps you have to take to do things. And here, it's entirely different. I just wanted to, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I read a small, I think a paper, so I don't know if it was a real scientific paper, but so this guy was trying to make the argument that intelligence, like individual intelligence, is sort of proportional to the tribe you relate to, the wideness of the tribe you relate to, right? So if your biggest tribe is your family, for example, right, and you only know yourself as your family member. It is this paper. These are not my words. So he says, you're not that intelligent, right? If your tribe widens up and say, my extended family, if you add my uncles and my grandparents, then you're slightly more intelligent than the other guy. But if it widens up to, my tribe is say my village, everyone in my village, I feel I could fight for my village, for example. Your intelligence slightly higher, again, to humans. So he says the peak is humanity, right? So if you relate to humanity and say, as a human, tribe, Buddhist stuff, kind of say, then you're probably most intelligent. But then he says, after that, intelligence. What happens then?
So he says, I don't know. I read it. It's quite interesting. I read the article about the paper. So I didn't read the actual paper, but sort of that was a big argument. So he says that if you go and start relate, so how you talk to, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but I hope you're not vegan, but how you talk to vegans, and the argument is they relate with life. So according to this guy, they're now at the place where now they're going to they're going down the slope. They've reached the peak of the biggest tribe you can relate to, and now they're sloping.
I don't think, it's really interesting. I just don't think the word should be intelligence. I just think it's your ignorance is less and less. No, when you speak with a vegan, if you don't speak with a vegan, you could just think like, ooh, this doesn't fit in my view of the world. So this is a strange person. I'm not going to talk with them like, ooh. But if you engage and you speak, then eventually you don't have to share it. But if you can understand the arguments, you become a richer person. Because you don't just assume that what you do or how you live is the way it's done. There's more out there. And then if you do this sufficiently and you see the different ways of living and the different values, you can really choose which ones you think are valuable, rather than just inheriting the ones of your little tribe. You can broaden so much and become a richer person. Not necessarily, because I think still many people would see or see all these different ways of life and then just stay with their own little thing. Like personal growth is not automatic. Like you also have to work for it. So I think, but by basically sharing and speaking with people with a different background,
well, my point was that traveling is sort of the shortcut to widening your tribe. It's when you say here in Uganda, right? When you leave the central region, the Buganda tribe, and say go to the west and see that all these people are exactly like you. When you think about them in the abstract, as say Bachol, rather Banyankole, like a different tribe, you sort of project these characteristics on them that are sort of dehuman until you actually travel and go meet them and you're like, there is not that big difference. So now your tribe widens, and if you get the chance to travel, the way you did.
But it depends on how you travel, because there's also a way of traveling which is basically just going somewhere, seeing the things, and just come back home as you were before. Like for me, like I could go and see the gorillas, which is a nice travel, but that is not what's going to enrich me. What would enrich me is when I take the time to speak with the people here.
I agree.
So it's not just a thing of ticking boxes. I mean, there's a lot of people that do it, and which is fine, but that's not what it is about. I think
I agree. I think the people who fall into the traveler's tribe, and so they're also stuck in that. They travel just for the sake of telling the other traveler that I've traveled more than you have traveled and things like that. Yeah, but again, to the bigger point, I feel like if it was up to me, opening borders and letting people travel in and out, it helps. My example, for example, is before I went to Europe. I've traveled to Europe but before I went to Europe, Europeans were these things I saw on TV. Like I'd interacted obviously with a couple of Europeans and Americans in Uganda, but they still weren't human enough for me, right? Until I go to Europe and have an interaction, go and meet a barman who's a European, meet say janitor who's a European, and these are, if you come to Uganda, for example, it's hard to see someone from Europe doing mostly those low jobs until you go and meet actually European telling you what life is hard for me too, and then the Ugandan, because that is sort of the story you have at home as well, you connect a little bit more, and the abstractness of like the person doesn't exist anymore. So now you see the European has gone away, and now the other people, the other humans just like you, living in that other place. And
and I think you're privileged because you had the chance to do this. So you could see beyond the stereotypes, and then you see that basically we share the same problems or the same structure of life. We have our family, we have our job. We just in a way struggle to survive. But and it's not because sometimes I do feel that here people think when you're white, the money just goes like this, which I perfectly understand.
I'm surprised it doesn't. You're telling me for the first time.
And I perfectly understand how they could think it, but then I think it's your responsibility in a way to be the ambassador of what you've lived there, and then those people that don't have the chance to meet the people in Europe, you can transmit in a little bit. The same way that I have the same obligation because my friends back in Europe, when I told them that I would go to Africa and live here for a few years, they were like, like, why? Who obliged you? Like, what did you do wrong? And I think what I also want to do, and I think I'm achieving it already by sharing. Then I share it on my social media, what I'm doing, who I'm meeting. And I open their eyes a little bit because they don't have the chance maybe to come here and to meet the people and to see how life is. So I can share that a little bit. So the fear of the unknown might disappear, no? Because in the end there is no free movement of persons because of fears that what they have might be taken by another. But this fear exists everywhere. It also exists here in Africa. No, I understand that in South Africa there was quite some protectionism, that they were afraid that other Africans would take away their jobs. But this is all ignorance, and this is why I think it's important that those people that had the chance to see a little bit beyond the horizon, that they share it with their friends and their circle. No?
Yeah. That's I read a tweet, I think a thread on Twitter, and some guy was criticizing sort of the reception that Ugandans had for the people who evacuated from Afghanistan. Yeah. So if you compare, for example, if say, I mean, the US, you remember Trump's time, if Afghans wanted to go to the US in big masses, a bunch of Americans will feel a bit insecure about that. And it's the same thing with Europe, when people were sailing to go to Europe. And so when the Afghans were coming to Uganda, so of course there's a little bit of controversial reaction, but the reaction wasn't, we want to protect Uganda from these people. It was more of sexualizing them, bring their women to Ugandans, right? And so the criticism here was, it's an esteem thing, right? That's the guy's tweet. Again, these are not my words. I thought it was interesting. Well, I don't agree with it as well. But what he was saying is, in the US, because they take themselves as sort of a higher class, I don't know if class is the right one, I don't remember the right words, but they take themselves of a higher class, they would resist people they think are the lower class. And Europe and the same. But the reason why most people who come to Africa claim that we are so welcoming is because we consider ourselves of the lower class, and so we are always open to welcoming people of, hypothetically, what would be high class, yeah. But in my opinion, okay, so first speak to that, and I'll give you my opinion.
No, I have to disagree, because just a simple example of South Africa, they were even killing other Africans. True. I don't think it's a matter of one group of Europeans do this and the US does this. I think is the fear of the unknown. So if something is coming, you don't know it. As a group, you fear it and you reject it. And this is the same everywhere. I think, which is the same because I spoke with some people and they were very upset about the Afghan coming here.
Oh, okay.
From some people from Uganda, but also there I didn't dig into it too much, but I thought it was just that they would be temporary and then go back. But anyway, the initial reaction, without being informed to the details, is rejection. Because,
I see, but that's the thing, though. That's the thing. I know there's a former presidential candidate who did. We had him actually recently on the podcast. Who did some sort of media tour, trying again to monger some fear, right? He was saying that accepting them, again, it's a political thing. So he was saying, accepting them obviously is fine, but they shouldn't be treated better than Ugandans because it's sort of trying again to imply that.
Yes.
So that's one thing. But my point though was, this guy's argument, right, was the way people take themselves, right? So optimism, for example, right? If you look at those two sort of perspectives, right? The optimist and the pessimist, right? Mm-hmm. Usually the guy who's pessimistic is the guy who has something to lose, right? Who has something is a little bit content of, right? So if I have something I like, towards that thing, I'm going to be more pessimistic because I'm more worried of losing it than getting something new, right? But a person who's on rock bottom is usually a little bit more optimistic. Okay, that's my opinion, right? He's a little bit more optimistic because there is a lot more for him to get than there is left for him to lose, right? And,
Okay.
and if you look at this from the Ugandan perspective, right, we are not worried about Afghanis coming to Uganda because, we imagine worst case scenario. Because rather we think that we are already living the worst case scenario, and so any kind of change literally is better.
Well, I don't know. That's not what I perceived. I was here for 2 weeks. I mean, I only had so much time to meet, but I received, or I noticed that not everybody was happy with this.
Oh wow! Maybe I'm
okay. Maybe I only met the few that think like this, but
yeah, I see.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's when you have more, you would be more pessimistic than if you don't. I don't agree. Like if you have something and you're pessimistic, you want to protect it.
Yeah.
But if you have something and you're optimistic, you want to share it and you're happy about it, then it's not. I don't think that changes. That changes you. Yeah.
I see.
I don't know. So I don't know. I have to think about it, but I'm not sure if I.
True. Yeah, you don't. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I think that's a conversation really. I wanted you by there to highlight a little bit on how you think, for example, us, how we can help push your message forward, and how you can help protect our copyright. We don't have any yet, but but mostly, how can we help push your message forward? For example, what are some of the ways?
Well, any information on intellectual property, I think, is nice to share, because there is not so much awareness about it. So what you could do, for example, have a look and see if it would be interesting for you to protect your trademark, so that nobody else can run away with your efforts. And that would be something. Yeah. And then in the future, like we want to have some more initiatives, launch some more initiatives to reach out to create awareness on intellectual property. So if then I send it to you and you share it with.
What's the nature of this awareness? So you've said that a couple of times,
yes.
And
This is basically to show, and then maybe especially to small businesses, that intellectual property can help them. It's not a necessary barrier. It's just it can help. For example, if you have a small business and then one day you want to go and trade with Nigeria, that if you have a trademark, you will be able to do it. Nobody's going to steal your efforts, or the musician that makes music, that they can in an easy way also protect and profit from their work. And on the other side, that's when you watch a movie, or when you listen to a song. And let me just give the example. If I'm from Uganda, I'm just a normal guy, and I listen to a song of an artist from Uganda, maybe a beginning one. To think about that, maybe this guy or girl, I shouldn't just copy it because I like this artist and I want to support this artist. Okay. So I can do it in this or that way. Okay, maybe you don't want to have Spotify, but then you can go to a concert, because there it's going to your artists. So I think this is if these platforms don't work in Uganda, I think that is a way how you can support your artists. So just what is awareness? Just basically to make people think about it, which I hope we did in a way also today. But yeah, it's just it's a first step.
True. I talked to Santana, the same musician that I've worked with on a couple of projects as well. His perspective was, and we had this back and forth about whether, say copyright enforcement is feasible in Uganda, and whether it's a good thing even. And, his perspective was that his fans actually enjoy his work and they respect him for producing it. That if there were instruments in which this is enforceable, if there were distribution channels, he knows he can talk to his fans to actually, provide value, right? So that was the argument. And the example he gave, for example, was how people invest in buying an original sort of football jersey, right?
Exactly.
Because they have respect for
exactly.
the
So maybe you copy the CD of these artists, but then buy a T-shirt. This is just think about it. Don't just take it for granted because it is somebody's hard work.
Yeah.
But that's in all areas. That's for musicians, but also as a small business.
Owner,
it's somebody's hard work, so they need to be rewarded for it in a way. So I think if you just that's already a big achievement. If just people can think about it and then think about what they can do, maybe with limited resources. But I think this is an excellent example of how they can contribute and give support to their artists.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Dennis, for accepting our invite. This has been a very interesting conversation.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks. When are you leaving soon?
This evening.
Oh wow. Yeah, so
I hope to come back.
Yeah, if you ever come back, definitely you should come back and check our studio out. By time, hopefully, would have grown it a bit. So yeah.
That would be nice. Yeah, I will come back maybe next year around September for the nege.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have it. Hopefully this COVID thing would be in check.
By next year it should be finished.
Well, that's what I thought last year. That's what I thought last year, but yeah.
That would be depressing. No, it's been enough, no?
Yeah, I agree. This is I've reached my climax of it.